I just want to welcome everybody who are visiting from out of town to Seattle, and thank everybody who's from Seattle and supporting this event. So thank you for coming. I know it's been an early morning, but we had some great keynote speakers this morning, and I appreciate that. My name's Subhadeep Chatterjee, and I'm from Google, and I help support the accelerators, the founders and the accelerators and incubators globally for Google Cloud. And I got a chance to meet with Atai maybe 2.5 years ago at a hackathon in the Bay Area. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself and CopilotKit?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks everybody for being here, and also thanks Eugen for putting this together. So there's a few people who are single-handedly pulling the startup energy into Seattle, and Eugen definitely one of them. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm a co-founder and CEO of CopilotKit. We make developer infrastructure for building AI copilots, which just basically means user interactive AI agents as opposed to fully autonomous AI agents. And at this point, we're the category leader here by growing margin. We power tens of millions of agent user interactions in production, all the way from the Fortune 100s to unicorns and startups and everybody in between. So companies like Cisco and DocuSign, Function Health, Oracle, and actually at this point, over half the Fortune 500s and the Global 50 are users of ours. Yeah, we're also the company behind the AGUI protocol. Maybe we'll get to that, the Agent User Interaction Protocol. Yeah, it was great. 2.5 years ago, that in startup years are like dog years. So that's a long chunk of time.
So there's a couple of themes that we wanted to. That might be a little bit easier. Hello?
Nice.
Okay. So I was thinking about breaking this up into basically 3 sections here as we have this conversation. The first one, as you heard, kind of a little bit about Copilot. We'll dive a little bit more about your journey starting CopilotKit and how that journey was since we met 2.5 years ago. Then we'll kind of talk about the enterprise adoption of agents because that is really where, according to Gartner, we're going to have. Last year we had about 5% penetration, and next year is going to go up to 30 to 40%. So there's a lot of money to be made there. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing, because you are, like you mentioned, in the top Fortune 500 companies. I think we'll get some really interesting insights as folks are building agents out there here today, as obviously the topic of the year. That business will surpass $450 billion in 2035. And then lastly, we'll talk about kind of the business models, because I think I get a lot of questions about that, kind of how are you modeling this, how are you generating revenue, what kind of business model are you running? So some insights into that, I think the audience would really appreciate that. So going back to CopilotKit, help us understand kind of your journey on CopilotKit, where you started, and some of the inflection points that you had as you're building that. And I know we talked about B2C, B2B, but I think you also started with B2D, right? To developers. That's who really started supporting CopilotKit.
Yeah, so actually, not many people know this, but we actually started B2C. The very early days was something totally unrelated. CopilotKit was 2 pivots away from the original thing my co-founder and I started working on. And actually, we were just talking the other day, I think as a founder, a lot of the pain is actually scar tissue, and you learn a lot from it. And the decisions we're making right now are deeply informed by the incorrect decisions earlier on. But what we worked on before CopilotKit was born out of an internal tool, actually. So we were working on an LLM native media database. So that was before the ChatGPT days. I was doing media infrastructure at Meta, saw GPT-3 back in the day. Looked like alien technology. We all got really used to it real fast. So that was the companies to understand long-form audio and video and to do intelligent search based on the actual content, which today you can see how you would do that. 2 years ago, that was just magic. CopilotKit started as an internal tool because very quickly we saw that asking these systems for full autonomy is asking too much of them. And of course, we've come a long way since, but I think that is still true. And so we built a Copilot-based system rather than a fully autonomous system. And I've been building developer infrastructure my entire career. That's kind of the world I came from. So I just instinctively built this as an open source library and put it out there. And very quickly started getting traction of its own accord. So that was kind of one piece of it. And then big picture, we really thought, this human plus AI modality is really the way things will go. If anything, we kind of over-index on it. It doesn't matter. There's still tons and tons of usage, but we really thought this is a core piece of the stack. Yeah, so we decided to pivot the company, and that was just a little over 2 years ago. And since then, it's been a long journey. And yeah, so developers really, we're open source developer first before we were a company, in a sense, or CopilotKit was.
So explain to us, like, how did you make that decision to pivot, or when was that decision made? Did you do that with your co-founders, like, or was the market telling you? Was the investors like? How did you find those moments to say, you know what, this is where we started. Now we're gonna go, east instead of west. How did you make that decision? Who was involved?
It was basically just my co-founder and I, and it was a funny story. So Yufan, actually, we just spoke here. We met her as an entrepreneur residence in Techstars, Seattle. We went through the last batch of that. And we actually got into the program with our previous idea. And the first day of the program, we said, we really think there's something here. So that was kind of a moment to, okay, there's, it's a good time to pivot if you're going to do it right then and then. And we decided to take the open source product that already started having its own traction and focus it as the business.
So as the next section that we're going to talk about is enterprise adoption. So explain how this went from like a very successful open source kind of adoption to how are you going to enterprises and selling this? And what type of use cases are you seeing? And how does it fit into the kind of alphabet soup of all these protocols and stuff? For folks, maybe some folks aren't as technical, so go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So first, our kind of core thesis is that over the next few years, all UI will be AI, right? All interactions between humans and any kind of technology are going to become mediated by agents. And that's definitely true for complex software and for core productivity work. But I would even venture to say it's true of your refrigerator. And the first time I heard this, I kind of raised an eyebrow because we're approached by one of the largest mobile devices makers, but also other devices, including refrigerators. But wouldn't it be nice if when you go to the refrigerator, you can just say, hey, I want to make this lasagna dinner tonight. Just order whatever is missing. And maybe if you reach for the cheese too late at night, say, hey, buddy, lay off the cheese. So really, agents are going to rule interactions. But the thing is, agents break the core paradigms of pre-agentic software where the whole internet is built on. And that's really the impetus for our protocol. AGUI emerged from our partnership with first LangChain and then CrewAI. We called it co-agents back in the day. And then the rest of the ecosystem came to us and said, hey, we really want this too, and we really want this now. And we realized if we're going to go one by one by one, it was going to take us a year and a half to get to all those great companies that we wanted to partner with. So that was the impetus for building the protocol. Kind of took a step back and said, okay, there's a bunch of abstractions here that we can factor out and then flip the script, right? We give them these abstractions, we can support them, but we're not doing the work one at a time. So we didn't set out to build a protocol, but that's where we were led. And it's since been adopted by essentially everybody else. So, the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Oracle, as well as the top startups. So, Mastercard, Pydantic, Agnoid, G2, Llama Index. So that was very exciting. And
one quick thing. How do you, because, I'm not super technical, so help me understand, like, there's all these other protocols out there, MCP, A2A, ADK, like all this other stuff. Can you explain kind of where it sits? Like, what is this protocol that everybody's so excited about that you guys have built? Like, explain that kind of connection.
So it's really, MCP and A2A is a really great contextualization. So it's MCP is obviously for connecting your agent to third-party tools and context in this universal way. A2A is similar thing for connecting an agentic system to other agentic systems. AGUI is the third leg of this triangle, essentially. It connects an agent to a user-facing surface in kind of a general-purpose way. So if you're building, an agent framework or agent harness builder, any type of agentic backend maker, you can now connect your agent to user-facing surfaces by making it compatible to this protocol. And it now just works, all the best-in-class features, it will continue to evolve on its own, and your users get all of this functionality for free. So that's kind of the core impetus there.
Awesome. So the agentic AI enterprise platforms that folks are building, that market will grow to 4.35 billion in 2025, 47 billion in 2030, with a 61% CAGR growth. This is the fastest growing segment. So how are you capturing that, and how are you pricing and getting ready to like really take advantage of that huge market that's starting?
Yeah. So I would say kind of our core growth strategy is don't let the surfboard slip under you, right? There's just this massive tsunami. Yeah. We're lucky enough to climb on it. You just gotta stay on the surfboard, and because there's a bigger thing here than anything that we can do in the market specifically. And specifically for developer infrastructure, the way this generally plays out, right? If you fast forward a few years, there's going to be 2 or 3, maybe 4 solutions that everybody uses, including the large enterprises. So our core strategy is to be the default choice for building user interactive agentic systems in order to then monetize top enterprises. So that's really kind of the business thinking behind the open source model, open core model. So we have our open source, which we really are building to be and has become a pillar of the tech stack and just gets enmeshed at scale across the ecosystem. And then we have the enterprise product that amplifies that core open source capability. And since we are the makers of the open source product, we're really well positioned to sell the additional things you need around that.
So how are you doing pricing? Is it a consumption-based pricing? How are you selling it as an enterprise solution so folks understand that?
Yeah. So we're still
paying for agents. Yeah.
Yeah. We're still thinking about pricing, to be frank. So right now, the things you have to worry about is predictability, right? So enterprises, this is the first agentic product most of the teams that we're working with are building. And when anything that is usage-based, they have no clue how much usage their system is going to get. And that unpredictability makes it very difficult to get through the finish line. So you got to find some way to insert predictability. And we have enterprise pricing, so we kind of do this on a case-by-case basis, but depending on what people need. But generally speaking, you want to make it easy to get started and to experiment. And as soon as you reach this kind of production milestone, you monetize when they are successful. And that's kind of our model. Let's take the friction out of the experimentation stage and we'll be successful when you're successful.
Awesome. And can you share with us some use cases that you've seen that is exciting, where there is multi-agents using your protocol and using your enterprise solution? What are some use cases you're seeing out there? Because I think some people are struggling to understand what is happening out there in the enterprise space. Who are using it? What are they using it for?
Yeah. So I think a lot of folks here are developers or technically oriented. We have kind of the benefit of being the canary in the coal mine. So everything that is happening in the developer space right now, with Cloud Code and Cursor and all these products, is happening everywhere else. It's just a little bit behind. And there's 2 big clusters of use cases for agentic products. The first is acceleration of core productivity work, right? So the agent is not just there in the sidelines, it's actually doing the core work that you're getting paid as a human expert to do. But the agent on its own, luckily for all of us, can't actually do the whole thing on its own. So that's just like Cloud Code, right? But if you have a human expert that works alongside the agent, you can get very, very far. So you're seeing these cursors and Cloud Codes being built for every vertical. And in enterprises, even if you have 500 employees doing some role, it makes sense to build a cursor that is verticalized just for that role. So that's one type of cluster of use cases, the core productivity enhancement. The second cluster is what we call the SaaS Copilot. And that's, if you have a complex piece of software, the primary interface to that software is increasingly becoming agentic, right? So you can just say what you want to know, say what you want to do, and this intelligent system is helping you mediate between all the capabilities and the software itself. So that's the 2 big clusters, and there's a bunch of stuff around that, but that's the core.
Awesome. All right, I just want to do a quick time check because I don't have a clock up here. Are we good to continue, or? All right, well, we'll continue the conversation. Actually, what we could do is maybe also throw in some questions from the audience, and then we can kind of take it from there as well. Are there any questions from the audience? How many people out there are technical founders? Raise your hand. Oh, okay, and business? Okay, that's pretty 50-50, yeah. So it's very
good
interesting.
mix.
So I'm going to take some questions from the audience now, and then what we'll do is we'll kind of take the conversation in the direction that you guys would like to go. Any questions? Anybody building agents? I hope so. Okay, there we go. I'm sure there's going to be some good questions then. There's some folks with their hand up in the front.
Is there? Oh, it looks like you guys microphone.
Do you have a mic?
Folks
Could you
here.
bring it? Yeah. Everybody's shy at the beginning, and then everybody raises their hand. So we have four people that we need to shuttle through.
So it's not specifically about your technology, but around it, we're having a hard time with the data, right? So we can build the agents, we can build the ML models, we can do all of that, and when we just send it into not controlled data, right, then it's just all just goes haywire. So we had to go build our database, and we really didn't want to go build our database. Do you see an innovation in parallel to what you guys are doing that somebody else is actually figuring out a way how to, like, for example, I can go to, there's a lot of databases for go-to-market or for recruitment, irrelevant for what we're doing because we're doing partnerships. So I have to go recollect all that data, which is annoying as hell, and it took us a year, right? And it's still very broken. Do you have like other partners or parallel companies that are doing what you're doing for the flexibility to say, I want to build an agentic AI platform tomorrow for, I don't know, hotels or this or that. And then boom, here's your database that is purpose-built for your agents.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's no doubt that data is king in the agentic systems, both for pure context, right? So that's what you're talking about right now, and also for improving the agent from the baseline, right? So even if you give it some context, it's going to do a certain level of goodness. And if you collect data for what was right, what was wrong, that's how we drive these systems forward. There's tons of companies right now building on the context enrichment layer. And it's, so I don't know specifically for partnerships, but that world is growing very fast. Yeah.
Yeah, so one quick comment on that. So I've also worked with the Mayo Clinic, so I don't know specifically partnerships, but there are accelerators or universities out there that have a lot of data. So like, for example, the Mayo Clinic, if you're in their accelerator program, you have access to a lot of medical data, which you need to build agentic systems for drug discovery and things like that. So maybe, I don't know about your specific area, but there are folks that are building this type of thing, and it might be a business opportunity in itself.
Could be, yeah, and it's more just data, it's more of a graph, right? Because agents have to then, you can't just feed it from a graphic data and have it act as a human to make decisions. It has to be more graphed together. So that's what I'm hoping for the next thing that comes out. Like, here's all the firmographic data, now build me a graph for this job.
Yeah, we could talk later, but there is a spanner graph that could help with that. And there's we work with a lot of companies in the fintech industry that actually help solve some of that problem. So we could talk later, for sure.
Hey, I just want to build on that a little bit. I wanted to ask about consistency of interfaces, right? So one of the problems that we've seen in the LLM era is that you send it what looks like the same input, right? And the models can come back with wildly different outputs. Now, that's already been a problem to deal with on the back end. Now, when you start talking about interfaces and automatically generated interfaces, and the thing that I like to liken this to is when we made the transition from the old generation of cars to like the Teslas, right? And those people were it took a lot of adjustment to go from like the dials and knobs and everything that they're used to across manufacturers, right? To go to just this touch screen where anything could appear anywhere at any time, right? I think we're going to have this problem with things like, CopilotKit and AGUI and anything else that's out there. Have you thought about that? What do you think we should go towards? Obviously you don't want to lock it in, right? But you do want some level of standardization. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, really great question. So we talk a lot about the concept of the generative UI spectrum, because what you described is the spectrum goes all the way from controlled generative UI, which is the most resistant to the problem you described right now, right? It's the most consistent. It's going to be the same experience again and again and again, but it's not going to adjust itself for different scenarios the user must be asking about. From controlled to declarative, where you get a bunch of standard building blocks, like Lego-like building blocks that the agent can assemble together. So you have partial consistency, all the way to fully open-ended generative UI, where they can read truly anything at all in the interface, and the agent is responsible for getting it right. So there's this whole spectrum that has emerged. We support all of it. Actually, on the declarative side, we're going to have a big launch with Google next week around A2UI, which is a declarative generative UI spec that you know, they're the main builders, but we're kind of design partners on and launch partners on that AGUI supports. So there's this whole spectrum, and really it's the job of product builders to choose the right solution for the right problem. And generally what we see is actually, like you said, the control generative UI, which is the most boring aspect, right? It's the least exciting. It's kind of the workhorse of the generative UI world. It's kind of the 80-20. It's for the most important, most used surfaces of your product, where you really want a pixel-perfect experience that you optimize over time. But then there's the long tail beyond that, and that long tail beyond that, that's where declarative and fully open-ended generative UI comes in. So yeah, really good identification of the problem, and the solution is pick the right part of the spectrum.
Great question. There's another, go ahead.
Question about how customers are responding to your adopting your platform. What are they saying about observability and asking you to demand or demonstrate when you implement, and what are some of the hurdles you have to cross?
Yeah, another really great question. So observability, there's two parts to agentic observability. There's observability of the agent's operation itself, and that's a new problem, but there's also a very crowded market of companies trying to solve that and doing a decent job. But then the second part is, how are your users using an agentic system? Right? Because as soon as you shipped an agent into your application, you broke all the traditional product analytics software out there. And we really see ourselves as kind of the agentic front-end stack providers. So the tip of that stack is the actual core enablement, right? Enabling agents and users to interact and taking care of that. That's what our open source product does. But beyond the enablement, there's insight, right? What are people doing with the product in production? And building on top of that, there's learning, right? So what is the agent actually getting right and wrong? And if you see what humans are doing in your application, that's giving you data for how to improve the agent over time. So I can talk about that in more detail, but that's the high level, and that's one of the core products that we're building in our enterprise product.
Excellent. There's maybe one more question.
See over there in the front.
Yeah.
So I have a question from the customer's perspective. So we are switching like SaaS interfaces from traditional SaaS, like people can use the GUI interact, to like chat interacting. But from a customer's perspective, especially B2B products, how can you build the confidence over time? For instance, I use Google Drive, and Google Drive right now has like a AI summary of what I did, what we add to, and what I need to look into. But how can I trust that information?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's fundamentally, you can't, right? Yeah. You're never going to have with agentic systems 100% consistency from case to case. So that's also where the power comes from. But you want systems that choose the right balance of, the error rate is not going to be 0%, but the benefits are so profound that it's well worth it. And that's where you want the enablement of this technology, but also the self-learning, right? So in principle, every time that your agent presented the correct information, there's signals in that interaction that it presented the correct information, right? The customer is going to be more happy, the conversation goes in a certain direction. It's maybe shorter because they got to the end result faster, versus if you give him the wrong information, it's going to go a different way. So you want to be able to pick up on all of those signals and reflect them to you as a business owner, but also to have the agent on its own adjust itself such that over time it will make the better and better decisions without intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think I got the thumbs up. Thank you again for this wonderful conversation, Atai. Thank you, everyone. I hope this was enjoyable and
thanks, everybody. Thanks, Subhadeep.
awesome.